Hey everybody, this is Stu Smith, and welcome back to another Tactical Fitness Report. And we have our friend Nick Barringer on again. Thank you, sir, for coming on.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure, Stu.
And you know what? This is number 250. So we're at our 250th Tactical Fitness Report that coincides with the Navy and Marine Corps' 250th birthday. So proud to have an Army guy on for this one.
Yeah. I like to say I planned that, but
it worked out. So anyway, if you guys don't know who Nick Barringer is, you need to find out. You need to go over to his Instagram channel. This is his name, Nick Barringer, and you will really learn something every day by what you post. And I go there all the time. I look for something, gives me ideas to write about, and I would say probably, I don't know, half of my ideas for military.com articles come from your studies, and then I'd
yes.
tag your study, not your study, but the study you reference in there, and then I try to give you a little shout out in there for showing it to me as well.
I
So
appreciate it.
I appreciate it. It's so important, and it's always science backed, and you have definitely opened my eyes into what we're going to discuss today, and that is creatine. I have to be um, full disclosure. I had a negative experience with creatine in the 90s. Not me personally.
Mm-hmm.
It was just me watching athletes who mid 90s that were doing these screener things that like we had at the Naval Academy. If you wanted to go
Yep.
to buds, you had to go through this 36-hour butt kicker, right? And if you were an in-season, out-of-season athlete taking creatine, we noticed a trend that was pretty significant, to a point where the military said, all right, no more creatine supplements at these special ops programs, just because of I don't know what it was. Maybe you can fill in the
Yeah.
blanks. It seemed like, whenever they were hot, um, pushing the limits, weren't hydrating properly, they just had these full body cramps that we couldn't shake. And it messed a few people's, spec ops journey quite significantly.
Yeah, that was one of the big things with creatine monohydrate, Stu, was the thermoregulation, and you even saw that in athletics. And the thought was that the creatine was taking up some of the water, and so you were putting athletes at a greater risk for muscle cramps and potential heat injuries.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's been a lot of research showing that not only is that not the case, it was kind of guilt by association, but there's been studies that show creatine it actually can improve thermoregulation, make you more resistant because you can retain more intracellular water and get it in there. And I mean, there was even a great study. I mean, this was all the way back in 2003 by the late great Dr. Mike Greenwood, where he looked at creatine use over a season in football players and looked at cramping and found no association between that. And since then,
that's awesome. It seems like it is the most, and you probably will tell me for sure.
Yeah.
It seems like there are more studies on creatine than anything out there.
I would, there might be more on caffeine would be the one if I were to say that,
Okay.
if there was another kind of dietary supplement, which you get coffee in there, but creatine's up there. Then after that, I would say there's a big drop, and you have creatine.
So we're definitely smarter about it.
Yes.
So we're definitely smarter about it than we were in the 90s, because I think, as with any supplement, it can get abused very easily, just by dosing incorrectly. And what do most people who want big gains do? Oh, more is better.
Yeah.
And the young athlete, I think, may have been having what they would call now a loading dose versus not sure, maybe a maintenance dose, because yeah.
It could be, and then also understand the kind of the polypharmacy in terms of most people don't just take one dietary supplement.
Ah,
So they could have been taking caffeine. They could have been taking other, other things with it that could have contributed to that condition, or they just weren't hydrated. They weren't, so there also could be some other factors. It's hard just to separate out the creatine, but what's nice is we now have the research where they've looked specifically at that and putting people in hot environments and giving them creatine monohydrate, and they found they not only not do worse, right? That in some instances they do better.
well, you know what? It has opened my eyes, and very rarely is there something that I have such a negative introduction to. It's like first impressions or lasting impressions,
Yeah,
and for me to change my mind, and I have my own thing of creatine
right.
here, and it is something that I I like to do now, and I do it at a very small dose, like 5, maybe 7.5 grams, versus 10 or 20, or more, and I find that to be quite helpful with my own recovery and things like, especially as I am aging. So I'm not necessarily looking for optimal performance and max 1 RMs on a lift anymore, but I am looking at all the other benefits that they have since discovered from creatine. And why don't we get into, all right, my initial introduction may have been an incorrect introduction. The Navy and most special ops programs don't allow it in their training. In fact, they don't allow any supplementation in their training,
Mm,
which that could be a debate of maybe they should now. I don't
yeah,
know. I'm that It's just been an easy answer for me over the last 25 years to say don't take it because you can't do it in training,
right.
right? But it's a little more nuanced than that.
Yes.
That's why I brought you on. So
Yes.
let's
Yeah,
talk about.
creatine monohydrate, and to give my background on it, is an interesting compound in that we were just talking before we started. We found the first paper that I could, lay eyes on. It was like 1926, called "The Fate of Creatine when Administered to Man." So 1926, talking about
Damn.
creatine monohydrate. Obviously, it wasn't as an ergogenic then, but just in your body. I mean, it's you're getting it from meat, you're getting it from protein. So we it's been around for quite some time. But in 1992, around that time, there was a guy, Dr. Roger Harris, out of the United Kingdom, um, did the first creatine monohydrate study, and found great results, and found that it helped recovery, muscle strength. And as I was telling Stu, I was lucky enough to be at an International Society of Sports Nutrition conference where he spoke and shared with the audience that he had set up that study to study beta alanine, and that he accidentally got delivered creatine monohydrate. And so since he had the study already set up, he just ran with it and just
Hmm.
went ahead. And so it was kind of cool that one of the most impactful dietary supplements of modern time kind of happened by accident, which I thought was neat.
Yeah.
But since then, my kind of mentor when I was going through my doctoral program, Dr. Rick Kreider, I think he was at the University of Memphis at the time, started studying creatine monohydrate with, and then he did it at Baylor, and now he's at Texas A&M. So a rich history there, in terms of looking at it and its benefits. It's been unequivocally shown to work when we talk about muscle and strength, right? Power. Like
Sure.
nobody's ever argued
Yeah.
like that. It doesn't work there. But what's interesting now is the cognitive benefits, right? There's been a couple papers with even sleep deprivation, because
Yeah, I
your
saw that one.
brain
That's
utilizes,
huge.
yeah,
Yes.
your brain utilizes creatine. So taking creatine after sleep deprivation, these individuals had better word recall, they had better reaction time, they had better working memory. Now the dose is important to look at with this sleep deprivation. It was zero point 0.3 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. So it is a higher dose. So for me, I'm like 80 kilograms. That's 24 grams of creatine.
Okay.
So that's a bigger dose. So that would also, what I want to kind of, for the audience, what you mentioned, Stu, that 5 to 7 grams or 3 to 5 grams per day. Great. Take that. You don't need to load it'll build up in the tissues. You'll reach saturation over 30 days. That's great for the average individual. If you are sleep deprived and you're trying to look at those benefits, you would need that, 0.3 mgs per kilogram dose or what's been shown.
Right. So when people take creatine, and let's say they're a young athlete that just wants to see improvements across the board, how is that set up? Is it set up the way you just mentioned it as far as dosing? Is there a higher dose for a short period of time and then they go into a maintenance dose? What are some of the protocols for taking creatine? Because this I know is where people mess it up.
Yeah. At one point originally, right, there was the loading protocol of where you would do about 20 grams for a week, and then you would go down to your maintenance.
Right.
What that does is that gets you get tissue saturation very quickly. But what's been found is you don't necessarily need that. If you're just going to take it consistently, 5 grams over 30 days, at the end of that 30 days, your tissues will be saturated in creatine, right? So you could do that. And I find for most people, that's what I recommend they do, just because there are some reports of like gastrointestinal issues. People get a little stomach upset if they take a lot of creatine at those higher doses of 20 grams. So you can completely avoid that and take that off the table. However, if you had an event coming up in say 2 weeks that you need your creatine to be topped off for, I would still consider then, if I had that where we had a time constraint, having that athlete load up on creatine.
Gotcha. So let's talk about, I guess, the pros and cons of creatine, benefits versus side effects.
The benefits, it seems like there's more coming out every day in terms of we know with strength, we know with power, we know with cognition, the brain can utilize it with concussions. Most NCAA teams right now, I guarantee you their concussion protocols, just as I know some of the dietitians with the football teams, part of it is putting them on creatine monohydrate. Same with a lot of the folks in the National Football League as well. Why is that? Our brain likes to run off of glucose. Well, when you get an impact, that can disrupt that glucose going to the brain. So another fuel source for recovery can be creatine monohydrate. So that can also help with recovery there. Another piece with there's even some there's a paper, one of which I know, with glucose regulation. So the GLUT4 from your muscle, it can potentially help with that, so you can have better glucose control.
Oh wow.
There's a lot of in the geriatric population in terms of preservation of muscle, preservation of strength, preservation of cognition. So much so that my 77-year-old mother, I have her on creatine monohydrate. She had recently broke her leg, so that was part of what I had her on for recovery. But then I'll keep her on, for the rest of her life, just kind of because it's, you think of in the geriatric population, they don't have much of an appetite, because where do you get creatine from? Maybe we should back that up.
Yeah,
is from animal sources is your best sources, right? So chicken, beef, salmon, that's where you're getting most of your creatine from. So if you're not eating a lot of that, or very low in your diet, which again, elderly, the taste buds don't work as well, you just don't want to eat as much meat, those sort of things, you can get creatine, get them to take it, and they can really see a benefit. And that's also a population that I personally working with have seen the biggest benefit is, let me tell you, if you have a vegan or a vegetarian athlete and you put them on creatine monohydrate, it's like jet fuel, because their stores are naturally going to be so low because they're not eating meat.
No, that's a really good point. Yeah, because I did some reading a little bit about how much meat it would actually take to just get a minimum recommended dose of like 5 grams a day. Like evidently from a normal diet, and when I say normal, meats and carbs and fats, not trying to gain weight, not trying to lose weight, just trying to maintain your weight, you can make about 1 gram of creatine a day. Your body will pull from that. And so that's why people supplement.
Yes.
I mean, you would have to eat how much steak and chicken and fish to get
It
5
would
grams
be
of,
yeah, it would be a significant amount. You would have to, and so
not
that's
just
just
servings, just plates of it,
right. And
right?
and, and so there's one just eating that. Then there's a cost. Meat's not cheap, right?
Yeah,
Especially now.
yeah,
And so creatine's kind of a more efficient and honestly cheaper, way to get in that creatine monohydrate. And so it is one of those things that supplementation just appears to make the most sense for most individuals.
yeah. Yeah, because I will say this, I've always been one of those guys to see, like, when people recommend beta-alanine or they recommend protein supplementation or anything like that, I try to find the natural source to do that first. And it always comes back to, like, I just can't eat enough steak and chicken to get this. So that has probably been the biggest, aside from the latest studies on cognition and sleep improvement and brain repair, been the biggest reasons for me now at my age in my 50s to actually start doing a small dose of that.
Yes, and I looked up. I think it says like yeah, it's about at least over 2 pounds to get around four grams of creatine.
Whew,
For,
that's a big steak.
yeah, yeah.
That's like a pot roast.
So again, for most people, practically trying to crush that every day just wouldn't make sense.
No, I agree. I agree. So what are some of the things in the future that people are looking at in the scientific world about uses, possible uses for creatine? Have you seen any of those hit the
I mean,
airwaves lately?
yeah, I mean, neurodegenerative diseases. I think you're going to see it used in a lot more disease states.
Nice.
I will say, just some things with the creatine, and I grabbed a bottle just to kind of go over some of the things to look for because I think it's important.
Oh, smart.
Is
Yeah.
is Crea Pure is what I recommend, and so it looks like I don't know if you can see that
Okay.
on
Yep.
there, and then I like this NSF certified safe for sport. So what this
Yeah.
means is this is the German-based creatine, right? And then this means this has been third-party tested and doesn't have any banned substances, et cetera. I want that on all my supplements. But why I like the German-based creatine, and it's a little more expensive, just to let everybody know, is the creatine. There's creatine out of China and India.
Yeah.
If you look at the test, consumer labs, and when you see creatine being tested, and any test that where creatine monohydrate has failed, it's always the Chinese or Indian based
Wow.
creatine monohydrate. CreaPure, the German based creatine, has never failed a test to my knowledge. Like it's always, what's in it set, is in there. It doesn't have any contaminants.
Yeah, I was
So
just looking at my Thorn
yeah,
creatine. It met those standards.
yep, yep.
Pure and NSF. What brand do you have?
So this is Bubs.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they're great
yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah. So this is Bubs Natural, which also has a connection to the Navy SEAL community. But yeah, so just look for those because that's really important. Then the other piece that's I see that's popular, people need to be on the lookout for is I don't recommend creatine gummies
Oh, okay.
because what happens with creatine when you put it in a aqueous solution, put it in liquid, it disassociates the creatinine, the waste product. Um,
Ah.
so you think of gummies, right? There's going to be some moisture in there. And again, if you look at consumer labs and some of this study, I think Now Labs actually, pardon me, Now Labs just tested a batch of creatine gummies, a bunch of different companies, and I think 46% of them didn't contain any creatine at all.
Mm.
And I think that's the form factor in terms of I would need somebody to show me that they figured out how to capture that creatine in that gummy without it getting exposed to moisture for it to work. So in the meantime, just go with the powder. It's
Yeah.
cheaper. It isn't as tasty as gummies, but you know at least then you're getting your creatine monohydrate.
Yeah, I was just looking at a brand I got for my dad because he's the same as you, same as your mom.
Yeah.
He lives with me, and he's. I just wanted to try something out, and I thought, well, maybe these would be good, like these little.
Yeah.
They're not quite gummies. I would call them like
Are they
now and
like
later.
a tab? Or
What's that?
are they like a tab, a dry tab?
Yeah, they look like a little square. You remember now and laters when you were a kid?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, look just like a now and later. Don't taste like a now and later. They could taste a little better. But I was just testing those out. But this does not meet that standard you were discussing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not saying everyone that doesn't is
Right.
bad, but I know
Yeah.
everyone that does is good. And
Good.
so that's
Okay.
what
Yeah. Okay.
I personally use them with my athletes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't mind these. I think just testing them out. For half of what I do is I like to test out things. If I'm going to write
Mhm.
about them and speak about them, obviously I'm testing them out
Yeah.
just to make sure I'm not speaking out my butt. But yeah, no, this is eye opening for sure, and I'm just so interested to see if what is it that caused my initial reaction to
There was a lot
that.
of stories I remember in press at the time. I don't,
Yeah.
it was kind of this pervasive thought that you know creatine caused this, and I think what happens, and this has happened with dietary supplements before, is you have somebody have a heat injury, right? And as soon as you find out they're taking a dietary supplement, it's easy to be like, okay, we got the cause. Let's move on without looking at other factors.
You're right.
I mean, there was even probably and I'm not saying people should be taking ephedra or anything like that, but even if you look at like that athlete, I think it was the Baltimore Orioles, way several years ago, who had that incident with ephedra that kind of caused Congress to get involved and all like
Oh
that.
yeah. Yeah.
That heat injury. So you remember that. Well, what was interesting about it when I kind of dug into it and saw the fact, it was like the individual was overweight. I think he had on a plastic suit, had a family history of disease. It was like all these other factors. The athletic trainers on the staff didn't pack him with ice when they saw that he overheated. There was like all these mistakes along the way. And when you read all that, you were like, it was kind of easier just to be like, oh, it was the ephedra that caused it. You're like, there's all these other factors in there.
Sure.
And again, I'm not saying in that instance that's not something to consider, but I feel like creatine kind of could be that scapegoat in some of those areas where an individual overheats.
Yeah.
Quick to be like, all right, it was the creatine monohydrate, not did we check to make sure everybody was hydrated before they started this event?
Yeah.
Were we utilizing the wet bulb and the appropriate heat index and all those other factors? I'd be interested to look at that.
Yeah, that's a real good point. That's a real good point because it wasn't much longer after that it became, buds wide anyway. Like if you're
Yeah.
at buds, you couldn't take supplements. If you're at this selection, you couldn't take supplements. And
It's an easy variable to control, and I get it. And I'm not saying it's a bad practice because you open it up to other supplements, and there's definitely some supplements out there that can put you at risk.
yeah, that's a really good point. Really good point. So I don't. The reason why I brought that up is really I don't mind them saying no
Right.
supplements. I think it's probably the safe answer for a large
Yeah.
group of people. And it kind of gets you more psychologically in tune with what you have to do to get through that trigger. You can't rely and have
Right.
some psychological crutch on supplements, which I've seen happen as well. People are like, "Oh, I'm losing all my gains. I got to get some more. I got to get some
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
creatine or protein or whatever." And so, yeah, that's an interesting one. So yeah, so way too many benefits from creatine. to discount it anymore.
I would say so. I mean, the only side effect when you're asking kind of like the pros and the cons is weight gain, right? And I mean, and that can be good and bad if you're trying to gain weight. I would say weight gain for our tactical athletes, to be cognizant of that in terms of, if you're right at the cutoff of your run, and now I add 2 pounds to you, 3 pounds to you, that could
may not be helpful. Yeah.
That may not be helpful, right?
Yeah.
So I do think there are some give and takes with it to be considered with the weight gain, or if you're a weight class athlete, right, for whatever reason, then that would also be another consideration. Maybe you cycle that off when you have to make weight. You come off of it, and then you get back on it as soon as you make weight.
You know the study I would like to see, and this is something you PhDs can toss around. I would like to see a group of people, men and women, who can't do pull-ups.
Oh yeah.
Right? They get on a pull-up protocol. Half the group gets creatine, the other half does not.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, how that would turn out. Because I'm pretty, I have an idea how it would turn out, but I don't want to, say it without actually, proving it. But it would be an interesting study to see if it helped in that thing. Because I always tell people, your first pull up is a strength exercise. Your 20th is a muscle stamina exercise.
Yeah.
And creatine seems to help with both.
Yes.
So,
yes. So, I mean, certainly, I think it could, enhance. And again, especially populations who may not have the best diet in terms of, they don't eat a lot of meat. They don't, they're not consistent. So it could help those individuals probably more than anybody. So.
All right. So next time I have you on, we'll talk about the study that you're going to do.
Yeah. Pull up. Well, we just need to get the the Department of War on board and just do it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you this: the FBI just changed their fitness test, and they took out sit-ups and added pull-ups.
That's huge.
So now they have pull-ups, a 300-meter sprint, push-ups, and a 1.5-mile run.
Love it.
That is the new FBI fitness test. They've always had pull-ups, but it just never counted towards their scoring process. So you could actually still pass the test and do 0 pull-ups. But now it's part of the scoring process, and
which will make people do more pull. I mean, that's the thing about testing, right? I'm sure you appreciate.
Oh my God, yeah.
Testing. I tell people, I'm like, the magic is that testing drives the training. So, and look at it, and this has been brought up. There's a guy, Alex Moreau, Mops and Moes. I don't know if you follow them. He's a big advocate of the leg tuck, which the Army took away, which maybe come back. But he brought up, and we should look up this paper. The Marines, did you see because they used to make it where you could still max the Marines test if you didn't want to do pull-ups.
And you had to do push-ups instead.
Right, you could do push-ups. Yeah. And then they changed that. And then all the people who couldn't do pull-ups started doing pull-ups in order to max it. It's just, you see it across the board. And I saw that even, doing some of the testing in the Army when they were first doing leg tucks, and they said, well, let's offer the plank. And I knew this was the death knell, and this is why. When I would offer the plank, there were people I knew I had seen do leg tucks because I administered the test. And they were like, well, I'll just do the plank and max it. I'll get more points if I do the plank. And so they quit doing leg tucks.
Yeah.
And so you create this, this environment. So it's like, really, if you want these people to meet the standard, and I just can't think as a tactical athlete, if you can't pull your body weight over your bar, it's either a strength problem or a body composition problem. And I can't think of any other test that'll figure that out faster than that. Like, I don't need a bod pod. I don't need
No, I mean, think about the usefulness of being able to do that too. One, it improves your grip. Grip is, grip is life changing in many ways, no matter what you're carrying or who you're carrying. Um, being able to get over walls and fences and other obstacles where you have to actually pull yourself over it. It is just a useful thing, and it is the hardest calisthenic workout we have. I mean, you might be able to compare dips to it because it's your body weight, complete body weight that you're moving. Um, but yeah, I think it's one of the most useful ones that we need to spread about. And there's no difference between, well, I shouldn't say there's no difference. Men and women can both do pull-ups,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and
Everybody can do it.
men and women both cannot do pull-ups, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah. It's,
Just because
I
you're man doesn't mean you'll be able to do pull-ups.
I love it, and I love it for my dietitian hat because one of the things that caused the biggest consternation when I was on active duty is obviously anytime you talk about measuring body comp, right? The tape test is this, or if you do that, then you get the DEXA, and then the time component to get everybody through. And I would always say I would rather just have a minimum amount of pull-ups, and I don't care about your body composition because you just showed me your strength to body mass ratio is on or off by the pull-ups you do. And so that's why I love it so much is if you set a standard, if you say, hey, everybody's got to do 6 pull-ups, well, whatever your body comp is, it's going to be pretty. I guarantee you're not going to have people with 30% body fat banging out 6 strict pull-ups. Yeah. Probably not. And if they can, more power to them.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. Only people I've been able to see do that would be like offensive linemen who grew up strong all their life, put on extra weight to make their position, and are just still strong pound for pound.
Yeah.
No, that's something. Yeah, I know we kind of digressed here a little bit. Any final last words on creatine coming from the doctor?
Yeah, again, there's only one population that I'll tell you what I get asked about, and there's only one population I haven't seen the study for. If anybody knows this or whatever, that I can't say it's safe. I wish I could. Is breastfeeding women. I have not seen any creatine papers, and I get asked that by moms all the time, and it would make sense, a possible benefit to the baby and all like that, but there hasn't been any studies. So that's the only. When people ask me, who can or can't take creatine, I'm like, well, that's the one population I haven't seen study is breastfeeding women. But hopefully, somebody eventually
That's interesting.
does that. Yeah.
Wonder if we had any jacked babies come out of it. Babies that come out and they're already
they do that study, and 20 years later, like all those babies are Olympians. That would be something. That would be something.
That is something. So anyway,
one population. Yeah.
So anyway, I'm glad you came on. I appreciate it. I always learned something from you, and the recent, I'd say at least the last 10 years have slowly started making me evolve towards like, okay, maybe I had a bad experience with it. And does it make sense in the present with all this science that is behind it? So I have changed my outlook on it, sir.
I'm glad we can convert you, Stu. I'm glad we brought you to the creatine side.
All right, sir. I appreciate your time. Everybody, go check out Nick Barringer. He's over on Instagram. Please, any other places where you're focused out there?
I now have drnickbarringer.com.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I'm learning.
You're evolving as well.
Yes, I'm trying.
Evolving with the technology that's out there. Good. drnickbarringer.com. I love it. I'll post it in the comment section, and so people can read that in the description of this video, and we'll move on from there. So yeah, you guys go check out Nick Barringer. You'll get smarter every day that you do.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.